There have been 6 questions that have been written ahead of time, and they are on 3 major provincial themes. The candidates will all have the opportunity to make an opening address to you, and then we are very fortunate to have Peter Milliken as our moderator, and he will shepherd the candidates through the questions and their responses. And I would like to introduce the candidates now. In seat A, we have Bitu George. In B, Harvey Rosen. Seat 3, Sophie Kivala. And last but not least, David Morris. And again, I want to extend a special thanks to the candidates that have put their name forward. This is not an easy thing to do, and the work that follows the nomination is not easy at all. So while we're very fortunate, John Gerritsen is still our MPP. He will continue to serve until the next general election is called. So after the nomination contest, and we have a candidate, we will have 2 people in Kingston and the Islands. We will have our MPP, John Gerritsen, and our candidate for election in the next general election. Without further ado, I will turn the procedures over to Peter Milliken.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be invited to be here to chair the proceedings today. It should be a most interesting discussion and debate between our 4 candidates, wonderful candidates who are seeking the nomination. And I'm sure that you're going to enjoy the discussion that we have this afternoon. I'm looking forward to it very much. The procedure this afternoon will be that there will be opening statements by each of the candidates, 3 minutes. Time will be enforced in this regard. And then there are questions that have been proposed by the riding executive in 3 subject areas that I will put to the candidates after the opening remarks are completed, and each will get 2 minutes to respond to each of the questions that are put. So there will be, again, time limits imposed on these responses. And then there will be closing statements by each of the candidates, 2 minutes each. And the order has been specified for me for these remarks. And we will go A, B, C, and D, as was indicated in the introductions. And so I will now call upon the candidates for their opening statements. And the order is specified. Candidate A, Mr. Bitu George. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Milliken. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming out on a cold but sunny day. It's glad to see such a great turnout for this type of event. My name is Bitu George, and I'm running for the Liberal nomination to be your next Liberal 2-year candidate, as well as the next member of Provincial Parliament for Kingston and the Islands. I'm running because I, like many Kingston and the Islands residents, want to see Ontario achieve its full potential. I want to help build trust and confidence in the province of Ontario as well as its provincial government. I want to help build an Ontario that is economically prosperous, socially just, and environmentally sustainable. I know from previous experience and from our history that when we come together as one people, we can achieve great things despite the challenges. With regards to my background, I think a lot of you probably already know my Liberal Party background and experience. My website has a lot more detailed information on that. I've been active in the party since 1991, both at the federal and the provincial levels in various positions. I won't bore you with all the various titles. With regards to my personal background, I was born and raised here in Kingston, Ontario. My parents fortunately made the great decision of settling here in Kingston after immigrating from India, unlike most new Canadians who tend to settle in large urban centers. I've had the understanding and experience of new Canadians and immigrants and the challenges they face coming to this country. I also understand the great opportunities that my parents were able to achieve coming to Canada. They wanted to look for a better future for themselves and for their children, and we've been very successful in that. But that only happens when we come together as Liberals and as Canadians, as well as Ontarians, in building a great society that allows opportunity for all. Unfortunately, we have political voices in our midst that believe that that is not the case, that we should go back to having a situation where people will look after themselves, where we don't look after each other. And the reason why I'm a Liberal is because the Liberal Party is a party that looks after our neighbors and our friends, our community and our country. Other parties advocate different policies, and some parties advocate similar policies to the Liberals, but do it in a fiscally less than responsible manner, if I can put it that way. I think the Liberal Party has figured out the best way to be able to achieve social progress, but do it in a fiscally and sustainable manner. With regards to my community experience, many of you know that I had the fortunate privilege of serving as a city councillor on Kingston City Council, as well as serving 1 year as deputy mayor. But I've also been involved in other sectors of the Kingston community, whether it be the hospitals, whether it be heritage, whether it be the environment, or in our education system. I'm presently the Vice President of the Kingston General Hospital Foundation. I'm past... 30 seconds! Well, all right, time just flies when you're having fun here. I bring a fresh approach, new ideas, persistence, and commitment and liberalism. And I look forward to answering the questions you may have and the questions we have today. And hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions in more detail with more time at the end of this all candidates meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, too. I now call on Harvey Rosen, our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, we're here this afternoon to assess the strengths and weaknesses of the nominees before you, to learn who we are and what we stand for. As I believe most of you know, I'm here because I care about the people of this riding. I want to serve you in the best way possible, with the power that liberal values bring to bear on the problems we face as a community within a great province, within a great country. There are, it seems to me, 4 areas of vital concern that will form the context within which the next election will be fought, and a fight it will be. Healthcare, jobs in the economy, the environment, and education. These are the concerns of most Ontarians, and it will be the party in which the trust of the people concerning these issues is most deeply embedded that will prevail at the polls, that will form the next government. We can and we must do better than we have. Catherine Wynne is doing a remarkable job remaking the party, but she needs our help. We need to send a Liberal member to Queen's Park who will remember who they are representing, the people of Kingston and the Islands. If all our representatives in government brought to bear this perspective, as Kathleen Wynne has, the people of this province as a whole would truly be served by Queen's Park, and this province would once again be the flagship province, the Canadian flagship province it once was and will be again. The problems and concerns we face in our community are not unique, but they are shared to a greater or lesser extent by each community in the province. The question, however, must always be, what is best for my community? And to answer that question, I must work hard to listen to what you have to say, to what concerns you have, and to what you want and how you want your lives and the lives of your children to be improved. I believe we would find a remarkable degree of consensus on these matters throughout the province. In attempting to achieve the ends you desire, we cannot be profligate. However, we can and we must make the difficult choices among competing alternatives demanding our limited and hard-earned resources. That is to say, we cannot have all we want, but we can, as a community, have all we need. And that is what it is the job of your government to deliver. Whenever John had the pleasure of announcing the granting of provincial funding here, he always made the point that it was not the government's money that was being invested in the riding, but merely some of the community's own money coming home. He knows that all politics is local politics.
I'm afraid the time has expired for your remarks.
It's amazing how much quickly it
3 minutes just flies by. Thank you. Our next speaker is Sophie Kiwala. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you all for being here and engaging in this important process. And it is really important. For while federal politics gets much of the attention, it's provincial politics that affects our lives on a more intimate level. We are here today to seek the answer to two questions. Who is the most electable candidate? Who will best represent the interests of all Kingstonians? I was born and raised in Kingston. As a young mother, I returned to school in Toronto, worked in the wholesale and retail management for many years, and then opened my own store. As an entrepreneur, I learned to manage budgets and inventory, and about working with customers and staff. In my 5 years living in Turkey and France, et je suis bilingue, and traveling in the Middle East and Africa, I also learned valuable life lessons. Most notably, how easy it is to take our prosperity and solid institutions for granted. Upon returning to Kingston to nurse my mother, who has sadly now passed away, I went back to Queen's to study political science and then began working at Peter's office. Thank you, Peter. For the past years, in the MP's office, my local team and I have advocated for all Kingstonians, regardless of political stripe, with numerous federal departments and ministries. I've seen families confused and ashamed and struggling to survive. I've heard heart-wrenching stories from seniors who cannot look after their disabled adult children. I've advocated for business owners on numerous projects, and I've been screamed at on the phone by inmates who have committed heinous crimes. You'd have thought that by now I'd have heard it all, but inevitably, tomorrow will bring something new. Through this unique perspective, I have developed an in-depth knowledge of this community's diverse needs and aspirations. Voters are demanding that politicians be more accountable, transparent, more caring and compassionate, and be more aware of the needs of the community as a whole. I have always believed that every encounter is an opportunity to connect positively with people, and not just during election campaigns. In recent weeks, I've been reminded of the extent to which my personal connections in this community reach across all social and political divides. What I can tell you from my heart is that I am deeply committed and love the work that I do. And if selected by you, I'd be honored to continue with the same integrity and dedication as your Liberal candidate. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Now call on David Morris.
Thank you. Good afternoon, friends, and thanks for being here, and thanks to Catherine Milks and our KIPA Nominations Subcommittee for organizing this afternoon's event. And Peter, thank you for agreeing to be here. I understand Peter was a little nervous about his duties today. Apparently, after 10 years of presiding over question period in the Commons, the prospect of people actually answering the questions they were asked, and I hear he's a little concerned his game will be off. I've come to realize over the years that all I know about taking responsibility for one's community, about leadership, about consensus building, about what's really important in life, I can trace back to my parents' insistence that my 4 siblings and I hold hands and stick together, most particularly on those occasions when we would have preferred to do quite the opposite. And why I tell you this has everything to do with the next 20 years. We're on the cusp of profound change here in Ontario, change that'll be driven by our commitment to meaningful action or the consequences of our inaction on 3 important fronts, and you can probably guess what they are. Number 1 is climate change, and for our young people, the unleashing of the long-awaited promise of the green economy. Number 2, the growing gap between those in our society who are thriving and those who are falling behind, and the shrinking middle class that's always been the strength of the fabric that holds us together. And number 3, the growing gap between our increasing need for essential public services, and of course, healthcare tops the list, and the affordability of those services. The next 2 decades, I believe, could be a period of great turmoil or, as I believe, a renaissance, a rebirth of Ontario as an economic engine fueled on the byproduct of a revitalized, fair, and just society. Chaos or great creativity, I think the difference will lie in the strength of our resolve to hold hands and stick together as we take on the difficult conversations in the years ahead, and as we take on the challenges of what I believe could be, will be, a bright age ahead. Before this afternoon's out, I'll ask you to join hands with me to ensure that Kingston and the Islands helps shape the next 2 decades of our province's future, as it has helped shape the last 2 decades. For now, I'll invite you to simply enjoy this afternoon's conversation. Thank you.
I want to thank all the candidates for wonderful opening remarks. You can see we have very good people seeking the nomination here. The questions now will deal with 3 different areas. The first is healthcare, and as I say, these questions have been prepared by a committee. They're not mine. I am just putting the questions to the candidates. So, the first question. Many people say that reductions in the number of frontline nurses in our hospitals has reduced the quality of the health care that is being delivered to Ontario residents. In your opinion, should the province divert health care dollars to increasing the number of nursing positions in hospitals, or is there another way of solving the problem of how to deliver high-quality health care? 2. Would you like to start? Oh, are you starting that one, Harry? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't told that. Just down here. That's fine. Yes, the floor is yours, sir. Yes, absolutely.
Well, you know, the number of nurses is certainly an important factor in the delivery of health care in our hospitals. But more than that, I think we have to keep people out of hospitals. Money that is spent in hospital operations and necessary operations ought to be in some way, if we can, augmented towards health preservation and health promotion in our communities. I think that's where a lot of attention ought to be directed. We've got opportunities to keep people out of hospitals in a number of different ways. The CCACs are a great community resource that helps people be cared for in their homes. And they need nursing staff as well, and badly. As well, we have, there's a model for long-term care, which starts with independent living units, where people need no assistance, then moves to assisted living, and then long-term care. But these services are housed in one facility, separate buildings, but a continuum of care, which allows those who are using them to plan their future, know how they're going to be cared for, and move through the system in a very graduated and predictable way. Thank you.
Thank you. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The issue of health care is something that needs to be considered very seriously. As it is in its current state, it is not sustainable. There are tremendous costs associated with acute care and pharmacare and physician salaries. There are several different ways to approach this problem. One of the things that we can do is to move more people out of acute care facilities, which are extremely expensive. And we also need to focus on the social determinants to health care. 50% of people's general health and well-being is attributed to socioeconomic backgrounds. If you can't eat properly, if you have precarious housing, if you have many circumstances that are associated with lower incomes, your healthcare costs are going to be higher. We need to look at different ways that we can get doctors to take on only the emergency cases and the specialized cases for an aging population. We can have more personal support workers looking after patients in their homes, in the community, associated or supported by community care access centers. I think that it's definitely the way to go in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. David, the floor is yours, sir.
I think the first comment I'd make, there's a really interesting quote in the Drummond report on the section on healthcare, where the Drummond Commission makes the comment that we've been referring to Ontario's collection of healthcare providers as a system. In reality, the province has a series of disjointed services working in many different silos. Deb Matthews was here in early October and in a fairly public setting commented that the demographic analysis that she had done when she took over as health minister indicated that universal health care will become unaffordable in the province. And I don't believe that any of us is prepared to see that happen. The healthcare is currently chewing up about 48% of the province's budget, and I've seen projections that on the current trajectory, it will be 75% by the year 2025, and of course that can't happen either. The Drummond report lays out a long list of recommendations on healthcare reform, beginning with, and arguably beginning with a restructuring of the local health integration networks, not tossing them out as I think many people would like to see, but an actual restructuring. They refer to them as LIN 2s, the second generation. I think when we look at healthcare, and to Harvey's comment I think is absolutely accurate, we have to look at prevention. There was a comment in the paper last week that in walkable neighborhoods of Toronto, diabetes and obesity is 33% lower than non-walkable areas. We have to take an integrated look to reform. Thank you.
Thank you. Batu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I have some understanding of the situation of nurses because my mom was a nurse and that's what brought her here to Kingston. She applied to Kingston General Hospital back in 1967 or 1968 for a job and then got the job at KGH and then immigrated to Canada. So that's how she ended up here, and then my father followed her, and then I came along. So that's kind of the heart of our family history here in terms of the George family. Seeing her serve 23 years at KGH, you get a real strong understanding of how nurses are the backbone of the healthcare system. And the healthcare system, I guess back in the 1960s, was a little bit more structured in terms of tiers of responsibility or authority. You know, doctors were pretty much the people who were considered the managers of the system and in charge of the system. We've now evolved to a healthcare system where it's multifaceted. We've got so many healthcare professionals involved. We've got chiropractors, physiotherapists, pharmacists, in addition to doctors and nurses and other social workers. There's just a myriad of people who have specialized experience in various aspects of healthcare. The real question is, how do we make sure we have the right mix of healthcare professionals in our healthcare system? Is there a shortage of nurses? Yes, given our present healthcare system, absolutely. There's no doubt about that. If you're asking the nurses to be the backbone of the healthcare system, then you've got to have sufficient number of nurses to be able to look after patient care adequately. However, to do that within our present budget situation and not increase costs for healthcare, you're going to have to make some serious decisions about where you're going to reallocate priorities. Does that mean we're going to reduce the number of doctors? Does that mean we're going to reduce the number of other specialists in the healthcare system? These are the challenges that we have to address, but we're not going to be able to address those adequately unless we get accurate information as to who does what. And I think one of the things that we have to be cognizant of is that healthcare professionals, through their labor negotiations, decide what each healthcare professional can do. And we got to be mindful of that because, of course, there's going to be overlapping responsibilities. Can nurses do some of the work that doctors do? And so on and so forth. So I can give you some more information later, but my time's running out. Thank you.
Thank you, Batu. Okay, the next question then is the following one. Kingston is known as a retirement community. This can cause additional stresses on the healthcare system. What steps can the provincial government take to meet Kingston's special healthcare needs? We will start with Sophie on this one. The floor is yours.
I think one of the things that we need to focus on in this community with respect to seniors is providing them with more support to stay in their homes which is one of the things that's going to allow them to have better health. We need to make sure that we support them through adequate pension plans, and revising the pension plan in Ontario is hopefully going to have a trickle-down effect in that regard. I think that we need to also focus on making sure that we have adequate resources attributed to things like brain care, mental health, Alzheimer's prevention programs, considering that we are an aging population. And that's all I have on that one, I'm sorry.
No problem. David, the floor is yours, sir.
I think there's an amazing statistic that I came across a week or so ago. In Canada right now, there are about 5,800 people over the age of 100, and it's estimated by 2065 that number will mushroom to 73,000 people, essentially this population of the city of Sault Ste. Marie. We are going to have to, not just in Kingston, but in communities across Ontario and across Canada indeed, change our view of healthcare and aging. There's some interesting work being done in Denmark right now where the building code, and we're seeing a bit of that here in Ontario, where the building code is being changed to accommodate the needs of seniors. Denmark seems to be many years ahead of us in terms of housing designed to accommodate seniors. In terms of the healthcare system, I think, and it touches on what Sophie said, it's a case of us looking at alternative approaches to care delivery, community care, in-house or in-home care, and the supports that people need. I've heard John on so many occasions talk about the Bowling Green Apartments here in town that has care. The care that, on a pilot basis, care was put into one of the units in the apartment buildings, and it led to 3 of the residents being able to take their names off the waiting list for nursing care. Clearly, we have to look at expanding projects like that across the province. Thank you.
Thank you, David. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. When you look at the media and you hear the talk within, the talking heads with regards to challenges our society is facing, there's always been this concern that somehow there is this so-called silver tsunami effect, where the aging population is going to create so many challenges for our healthcare system. That doesn't have to be the case. I mean, if you have proper management of the healthcare system, you can handle and provide services for all our citizens. I think one of the things we have to be aware of is what are the factors that are creating challenges within the healthcare system. One of them is not having enough doctors who specialize in elder care. This is a little bit of a touchy issue, especially with the Ontario Medical Association, because the question is, how does the government influence who goes into what area of specialization? If you have an increasing aging population, but you don't have sufficient doctors who specialize in elder care, then obviously you're going to have a challenge there. So we're going to have to be really creative as to how we can persuade or encourage more of the graduates coming out of our medical schools to go into those jobs, because frankly, that's where the demand is going to be. We see the demographic information, we know that healthcare is moving in that direction. So we need to make sure that the people who want to enter, who want to make medicine their career, understand that and are focused in that direction and are encouraged to go in there. My colleagues have already talked about home care. If we can create a system where we can encourage people to stay in their homes as long as possible, that is the best form of delivering health care, not only just to seniors, but to all Ontarians. To do that, however, we're going to have to make sure we have sufficient staff, properly constituted community care access center, as well as having sufficient nurses and other specialists. The most important aspect, however, is exchange of information. If family physicians and hospitals and clinics do not have information with regards to a patient when they're leaving hospital or when they're going into hospital or when they're being sent home, and you don't provide the healthcare supports to help them in their home, then what ends up happening is you just have these people go back into hospital again. And we need to fix that. The Government of Ontario is committed to doing that in part through electronic medical records, and we need to continue to focus on making improvements to the system like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Batu. Harvey, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, I think that the question really is with respect to Kingston as a retirement community and what the impact of care of an aging population is going to have on our ability to deliver health services in this community. First of all, I think we need a representative at Queen's Park who's going to speak for our community and make sure that the government has programs that are available to address that concern. everyone has spoken about the various programs, keeping people in the home with CCACs, developing integrated long-term care facilities that have a graduated approach in terms of the need for care of the people using the facility. But once those programs are available, we have to be certain that the investment is made where it's required. Kingston is, I think, second to Victoria, BC, one of the most popular retirement communities in the country. So we're going to be affected more in Kingston. We're going to need more attention in Kingston. And we need somebody at Queen's Park who can focus that attention where it's needed. The problem with the backups recently and it's going to affect the rest of the population, not just the elderly people using the healthcare system, because the problem with emergency facilities at hospitals being backed up is because beds in an intensive care facility are being occupied by people who have nowhere else to go, and I think the health community calls them bed blockers, which is not a good term, but we need to make sure that there are places for those people to go in our community. Thank you.
I want to thank the candidates for their responses. Now we have each of them a 2-minute opportunity to respond to the answers the others gave to these questions. So it's, if you like, another debate, but without a question to lead it. They can address each other's comments. And so I will call first Paul on David to start. 2 minutes, sir, are yours for this purpose.
Thanks, Peter. I don't necessarily want to respond to any of the comments. I don't think I've heard anything that I disagree with. I think the kind of summary comment that I would make is the Drummond report is quite interesting reading, and I think if it had a subtitle, it would be how do we keep healthcare affordable in Ontario, because much of the report deals with the trimming that will have to be done to other programs in order to let us afford healthcare. The good news in the report, despite the long shopping list of recommendations, and the Commission comes back to it a number of times, that there really are good things happening in healthcare reform in the province, and it's being driven by the people like Bitu's mother, people who are on the front line who are making changes. The report does not call for reductions in staff. This isn't the conservative approach of beating up nurses and civil servants in order to keep the system affordable, but they are suggesting a very thorough overhaul of the healthcare system. In my opening remarks, I talked about the difficult conversations that we need to have, and I think healthcare will be one of the most difficult for us to have. Thank you.
Okay, the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. I too agree with David and my colleagues up here that there really hasn't been anything that I would disagree with in terms of our responses as to how we're going to address this system. But I think the one thing that we have to be cognizant of is we need to make sure that we have enough young people who are interested in getting into medicine or the various aspects or disciplines of medicine to be able to support this. One of the challenges that Kingston General Hospital certainly has is not only hiring nurses, but retaining nurses. They have quite a high rate of turnover when it comes to nursing care. And it's very difficult to be able to create programs and services for patients in the Kingston area when you have a high turnover of staff. We need to determine what needs to be done to keep those young people here in Kingston. And that's a bigger issue, not just in the healthcare issue, but a quality of life issue for the Kingston area. Given our demographic changes and the fact that our younger population is decreasing and we have an increasing older population, there's going to be more demand for those skilled young people coming out of our various universities and healthcare systems. And we've got to figure out a way of how we're going to keep them and attract them to a place like Kingston, because certain bigger places like Toronto automatically have a certain magnetism for young people. And we've got to figure out how we can get those young people to come here, otherwise we will have some significant challenges with regards to supporting our healthcare system. And the reforms that we need to make to bring in home care and have adequate care in the hospitals is going to be that much more difficult simply because we don't have the staff. And you know, when we have solutions, and a myriad of solutions, I've talked about them, my friends up here have talked about them, they require people. They require skilled men and women to be able to back up those solutions. And if we don't have a sufficient number of those people in a community like Kingston, then we're going to have some challenges. So I think that when we talk about healthcare, we always have to be cognizant of making sure we have the staff and the quality of young people and healthcare workers to be able to support the system. Given the demographic challenges, that's going to be an increasing issue as we go forward in the years and decades to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Batu. Harvey, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. I'm a great believer in procedure and following procedure. I think it gets jobs done in an effective and an efficient way. At this point in the program, I'm supposed to respond to what's been said and not introduce new topics. I think Steve and Batu appreciate my approach to this issue. And so, my response to what's been said is certainly supportive. I think everybody has a good idea of what the challenges are, about the ways in which we can address them, and how they affect this community in particular. And I'm certainly not going to say anything new because that's not the purpose of my response. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, now you've taken the wind out of my sails. I think we're all definitely studying from the same book, and that's a good sign for the Liberal Party that it's consistent, the messaging is consistent, and I'm going to try my best to not think of another subject to bring on, but I do go back to my original statements regarding social determinants to healthcare. We need to make sure that we do everything that we possibly can to support seniors in our community. And if it's alternative housing with graduated levels of service and care within those units, that's an alternative that we should look at. I think that in terms of who's sitting in front of you today, we need to make sure that we decide who is the best candidate, who can be open to new ideas and look at fresh new approaches while working together with others. That's it.
Well, thank you very much. We move to the second area then, which is education. And the first question is the following one. Studies have shown that there is a demand for well-trained tradespeople in Ontario. In Kingston, there appears to be a number of students who would like to enroll in apprenticeship programs, but a lack of positions is frustrating them. What do you think the province should do to help provide apprenticeship opportunities in the Kingston area? I now call on the candidates, and the first to respond to this one will be Batu.
Thank you.
Yours, sir.
Thank you very much. With regards to the challenges in the skilled trades industry, certainly there's been a lot of talk about this, especially with the newly establishment of the Council of Ontario Council of Trades, which has been established to be a professional regulatory body to regulate people in the trades professions. Certainly a lively debate, an issue that's coming, that's before us right now is what they call apprenticeship ratios. How many apprentices can you have working with a skilled trade person in a workplace? There seems to be quite a difference of opinion with regards to the ratios. Ideally, I think most everyone would agree that if you're in a situation where you can have one or more than one person apprenticing per skilled person in the workplace, that would be good. We know we have a challenge with skilled trades. We know that the average age for many of our skilled trades, whether it's plumbers or electricians or craftsmen, is near or around 60 years of age. So there's going to be quite a glut, I guess, or there's going to be quite a large number of openings in a few years' time when many of those individuals choose to retire. And if we are not able to supply the skilled young people to fill those positions, then we're going to have a challenge finding plumbers when we need a plumber or an electrician when we need an electrician. Not to mention the fact that if you don't have enough skilled people in the trades, obviously costs go up because of the shortage of skilled workers. So we need to be cognizant of what the public interest is with regards to the apprenticeship ratios. The other thing we need to do is we need to encourage the attraction of skilled trades in our school system. When I was in school, we did have an auto shop class, we did have tech shops as part of our school programs, and they started phasing them out. And now we're sitting here complaining about the fact we have a shortage. Well, I guess it's not really surprising why we have a shortage when we didn't really emphasize that as a career option, when everything was focused, unfortunately, on going to university or some mention of college. But we need to fix the education system so that trades are just considered as attractive and viable a career profession as the other streams of education we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Batu. Harvey, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Now, the question of opportunities being lacking for apprenticeship, for those who already have the basic training at our community colleges is a troubling issue. It does indicate that there is a lack of actual economic activity in Kingston then for those who wish to get on-the-job training, apprenticeship training, in their particular trade. And so I think it's part of the answer, of course, is to work on economic development in our community so that we do have projects that demand the manpower, that will give the opportunities to those seeking to further their qualifications in skilled trades by participating in an apprenticeship program. The other thing that we might do, though, as a province is try and balance out the opportunities for apprentices within the province by providing an allowance for them to go where the opportunities are available, on the basis that they may return to their own communities and bring those skills back home. I know it's difficult for young people to pull up root, especially if they've been raised and educated in one community, have planned to live their lives in one community like Kingston, and then find that opportunities for their furthering their skilled trade are lacking in this community. But if we can assure them that there are opportunities elsewhere, that they can take advantage of those opportunities and be assured of being able to return home to perform their trade skills at home, I think that would go some distance in answering the problem about the lack of opportunities in the skilled trades field. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think that one of the things that we need to do to encourage more people in apprenticeship programs is to, again, I support what Biju says there, is start in the high school level. In the office, we had some excellent co-op programs, and I have to say that the product of our first co-op student is sitting here in the second row, Maddie Ross. She was absolutely amazing. I had never taken a co-op student before from high school, and we always dealt with students in university and found that maturity level was an issue and preconceived ideas about what the field was going to bring to them. And in this student in particular, we were absolutely blown away. We need to make sure that the education system is overhauled to create room for co-op students and foster a really good situation for students going forward. Whether they end up getting into apprenticeship programs or skilled trades, it's definitely something that we should look at. And I think that the experience that we've had in the office has been an excellent example of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. David, the floor is yours.
I think there's quite a stunning statistic when you look at the apprenticeship program in Ontario. We have no better than a 50% completion rate in apprenticeship programs, and in some trades that drops down to about 35%. That's obviously a problem. We don't seem to have a problem, or a major problem doesn't seem to be getting kids to go into trades. It's having them complete those trades. What the reasons are for that might be varied. It might be young people deciding that that's not really the career that they wanted. I'm sure there's some of that. But I suspect the large percentage of the dropout rate has to do with young people returning to school and then coming out and having to find another 4-month placement, or whatever the placement happens to be, the length of time. I mention that, and I also look at the fact that in the economic statement that the government brought down in the fall, we've committed to $35 billion in infrastructure development, and I can't put the two of those stats together. If we are going to spend $35 billion in the next 3 years in infrastructure, surely we can incorporate apprenticeship programs into that work that ups our success rate, our graduate rate, well above 50%. I think cohesion in our government programs is an issue, and I think this is a case where we can easily find some cohesion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for all the suggestions put forward. I turn now to the second question on education. There has been a suggestion made to remove all-day kindergarten as a way of reducing education spending in Ontario so that taxes can be cut. What do you think are the advantages of all-day kindergarten, and is it worth the cost? Harvey, you have the opportunity to speak first on this issue, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. I think the advantages to all-day kindergarten are probably very great in terms of the consistency and quality of care of our young people, their opportunity to develop critical skills at an early age, and the benefit to our workforce in knowing that their children will be cared for at the expense of the educational system while they're at work in a productive way. Half-day kindergarten was always a problem in that respect because people had to make plans to have their children taken care of either in the morning or the afternoon when the children were not at school. And it's been proved that early education is one of the most significant factors in success in later life, especially among children from socially disadvantaged backgrounds. So I think we can be by using all-day kindergarten, we're taking advantage of an opportunity not only to schedule things for people in a very consistent way, but as well, we're offering the most economically disadvantaged an opportunity to strive to make better gains in the future. I think we're helping them, we're helping ourselves as well as a society and as a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I think that removing all-day kindergarten to cut taxes would be a mistake. I think that the economic spin-off that we have resulting from parents getting back to work is a very serious consideration that should be factored in. And I think that getting parents back to work, if they're able to do that and want to do that, is a critical step to our economy. Children do better when they're at school, all-day kindergarten, excuse me, I think. They have better possibility of going on and achieving better results in school. And I think that anything that we can do to support that is extremely important. I don't personally think that removing all-day kindergarten to cut taxes is a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I can't imagine that. I can't imagine cutting kindergarten to save taxes or to cut taxes. I don't believe that there is anything that we can do in the province at this point that would allow us to cut taxes when revenues are already under enough stress. There are interesting studies. There was one published in Ontario in the fall around the amazing impact of all-day kindergarten on school readiness for the first graduating class of that all-day kindergarten program. It was followed up a few weeks later by an interesting and contradictory study out of Manitoba, or a study that seems to be contradictory, suggesting that by grade 7 or 8, the impact of all-day kindergarten has faded. There isn't a measurable difference. But I think what's missing, and it comes back to Harvey's comment, the thrust of Harvey's comment, is we aren't measuring lost opportunity, and by that I mean the children that would not be getting stimulation at home, the impact or the savings, sorry, I shouldn't say savings, but for those children that are coming into the school system having had 2 years of kindergarten, what's the impact of that on the grade 1 classroom teacher who doesn't have to do the compensatory work, if I can put it that way. So in my mind, canceling all-day kindergarten is an absolutely no-starter. Thank you.
Thank you. Batu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. With regards to the question, cutting all-day kindergarten to cut taxes, if I can be so blunt, I think it's a stupid idea. I know that a particular party is advocating for that. I don't know if we could actually start referring to other political parties. The same political party back prior to the 2011 election floated the idea of cutting all-day kindergarten as a way to save money and cut taxes, and quickly dumped it as the election started, because of course they knew how popular it was with parents who had young children. That's irrespective of the fact that, you know, studies such as the study done by the late Dr. Fraser Mustard with regards to early childhood education talked about investments in young people between the ages of, you know, from the time they're born to 6 years old. And if you make those strategic investments in their education, in their social supports, they're going to be well-balanced, productive citizens in society future on. The challenge, of course, that we have is now that we're implementing full-day kindergarten throughout the province of Ontario, we're not going to see that payback of that investment for 15, 20 years. But the studies have clearly shown that we are going to see a positive uptake with regards to improvements in school, more productive students, students who, you know, who may come from less advantageous social backgrounds, who now have better exposure to the education system and have greater educational opportunities because of this. So, as far as I'm concerned, there's no way that, certainly not our party, and certainly not me, are going to get rid of you know, full-day kindergarten just to you know, cut a tax. I mean, there may be some other taxes we can cut, but not, we're not going to cut that service to justify a tax cut. No way.
Thank you, Batu. Okay, now we have again the 2-minute response that the candidates may wish to have in respect of the responses given by the others. And for that purpose, we will start with Sophie in this case.
Again, I don't think I can disagree with anything that any one of us has come up with on this issue. I can't imagine a justification for cutting kindergarten to save money or raising taxes, or, you know, it's just not a good idea. So I don't have anything to add to any of the other candidates' points of view on this.
Thank you. David, the floor is yours.
I believe this is the summary section.
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Looking across education in the province, I think we've seen some very positive things. We've seen high school graduation rates go up about 15% over the last decade. We see kids going into apprenticeship programs. I'm sorry, I say kids, young people going into apprenticeship programs. We have the world-leading rate of post-secondary graduates per capita. So we have a lot of positive things on the go. We have a very smart workforce, a well-trained workforce. I think our issue in terms of education is the next step beyond education. What are the opportunities open to young people to put that education to work? And I think that's where our focus absolutely has to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Batu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. With regards to what my friends here have said, I mean, I can't really disagree with anything, since I think we're all in the same boat with regards to what our view is on early childhood, full-day kindergarten. In terms of the education system, you know, Dave has provided a list of the improvements that we've had in the education system, particularly since our party has been in power. However, we still do have some challenges in our education system. The recent results from the PISA test, the International Mathematics Test, show that we do have some challenges with regards to mathematics scores when compared to other jurisdictions around the world. And so that's something that the Liberal government, and certainly I, if I'm fortunate enough to be your MPP, will focus on, because math and science skills are absolutely critical for the new economy that we're going into. And if other countries are doing it better, then the obvious question is, why are they having better results? And can those results or techniques be replicated here in Ontario? So we've done some amazing things with education, you know, certainly full-day kindergarten, reducing class sizes at the the elementary, primary junior level. But as those international test scores, the PISA test scores have shown, we still have some challenges with regards to the education system. So we've got our work cut out for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Batu, Harvey, the floor is yours.
Thank you. In response, there were two things brought up by other members of this nomination panel. One was, David mentioned the fact with respect to the $45 billion in infrastructure spending that the province is going to be engaging in. And it occurred to me that perhaps that would be a great opportunity to address two issues that are troubling. The infrastructure backlog, of course, but as well the need for apprenticeship opportunities. Perhaps we could make it a requirement of government contracts on infrastructure projects that the contractors have a minimal amount, a recognized amount of apprenticeship opportunities included in their workforce. Secondly, there was a mention of Dr. Mustard's work with respect to the benefit of early childhood education. By 6 years old, the dividends that result from that early childhood education are very remarkable. And we have had in our community, supported by the United Way, a Success by 6 program. I think that just demonstrates further the importance of the all-day kindergarten as a component of our education system. Thank you.
Again, I thank the candidates for their remarks on this, and we'll move then to the third area, the economy. The first question on the economy is the following. The leader of one of the other parties in Ontario has announced support for a policy euphemistically called right to work. Discuss your thoughts as a potential Ontario Liberal MPP on this policy. I will first call upon David to start the discussion on this one.
I don't know if the adjective I heard earlier was crazy or stupid, but it pops to mind. I come from a business background. I'm very sympathetic to business interests. I've been there, I've done that, I've employed people. This notion is absolutely ridiculous. The union movement uses the expression, the race to the bottom, and I think this is our greatest possible opportunity to do just that. When you look at, and I'm going to appear to take a side trip, if you look at the pension situation, not just in Canada, but across the world, around the world, what is saving our CPP, our public pension system, are the pensions that have been negotiated, the benefits that have been negotiated by labor. And the impact of anything that we do to undo those agreements, we are going to pay for as a population. This isn't about being pro-labor or anti-labor, this is about being pro-us. We want strong unions, we want strong unions with strong pensions, because it serves all of us, and it's probably right now the greatest protection for the Canadian pension plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the next will be Batu. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. This right to work concept, we've seen it at play for probably about 15, 20 years in the southern United States or jurisdictions in the southern US. And what we've seen is, sure, there's a possibility that you may be creating jobs, but what type of jobs are you creating and who are you competing with? Basically, you have a situation, well, let's take an example, Boeing. Boeing airline company, in terms of their new Dreamliner airline, they've got a operation in Washington State where the workers there have unionized benefits, and they have an operation in Georgia, which is a right-to-work state. So what they've done is now Boeing's in a situation where they're engaging in negotiations with the union in Washington State and saying, well, listen, if we don't come to an agreement with you, we're going to ship it down to this right-to-work state. Well, what do the workers in Georgia have? They get a reasonably good wage, sort of, kind of, but they don't get pension benefits, so they don't get health care, they don't get any of the other benefits that you would see as part of a properly negotiated union contract, which is what the workers in Washington State have. So basically what corporations are doing in terms of their political involvement south of the border is encouraging state legislatures and politicians to pass all this right-to-work legislation, drive down wages, and eliminate costs such as having to pay for pensions and having to pay for health care costs and so on and so forth. Mr. Hudak wants to bring that to Ontario. Mr. Hudak says he can raise, create 1 million jobs over a certain time period with that. If you drive down the wages, low enough, sure, you can compete with Mexico or overseas countries with regards to that. But what sort of quality of life are you going to have? The quality of life that we've had here in Ontario has been based on good wages as well as good benefits. And, a large measure of that success and quality of life is due to a viable and strong union movement. So, it shouldn't surprise anyone that Mr. Hudak obviously wants to take away powers from unions and weaken them and make them non-existent. So, this is another stupid idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Batu. Harvey, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, certainly I agree with the comments so far. But I think it's an interesting study that we can take a look at. It's, as an advocate, as a lawyer, our court system is based on two strong cases being argued before a trier of the issue, and two strong cases coming out somewhere in the middle with a just decision. In that similar way, capital and labor have to both be strong so that agreements made will come out somewhere in the middle, that it's not going to be bad for capital, it's not going to be bad for labor either. We all have to benefit from our system of, the economic system we all operate under in this province. And it benefits all of us. It doesn't just benefit the unions or capital, but the strong tendencies of both to work together to a just result benefits everybody. And the question, as Bitu was saying, who are we competing against with right to work type of legislation where unions are pushed out? We don't want the lifestyle that emerging economies are struggling with now. We have a lifestyle that we want to protect and secure. And doing away with union management operations is no way to protect the lifestyle that we all value in this province. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The union movement is under attack by both the federal and now the provincial Conservatives. As far as I'm concerned, there is no replacement for collaboration, and it's unacceptable to communities that are certainly to the labor movement that to have this imposed on them. I think that as far as a political strategy is concerned, it's a nightmare for the Progressive Conservatives, and that's a good thing for this party. I think that we need to be able to negotiate. We need to be able to work with each other and not impose this on our unions. It's a nightmare. That's it.
Thank you again, the candidates. The second question then for the economy is the following one. The Kingston area economy depends heavily on public sector employers and the tourism industry. The Ontario government has significant influence on both these sectors. As the potential Kingston MPP, what policies do you support to help keep the local economy strong? And for this one, we'll start with Bitu. Sir, the floor is yours.
Two subject areas. With regards to the local economy, studies have shown that up to 75% of Kingston's economy, excuse me, is based on public sector work associated with the federal and provincial governments. Obviously, legislation or policies that would reduce the number of civil servants or try and drastically shrink the public sector would have an adverse effect on Kingston's economy. So I'm obviously not supportive of any of those initiatives. More importantly, with regards to tourism, one of the challenges that we face in the tourism industry is, of course, the cost of the Canadian dollar. And a high Canadian dollar certainly potentially helps foreign tourists, particularly Americans coming across here. It gives them more bang for their buck. Unfortunately, it adversely affects our manufacturing sector. We need to develop ways to be able to continue to make Kingston a very attractive place with regards to tourism, taking into fact that the dollar is on the decline, which will help our manufacturing sector, but may pose additional challenges for tourism. I think one of the things that we need to focus on here in Kingston that we are uniquely qualified to focus on is heritage tourism. Certainly on my time when I was on the KEDCO board, we tried to emphasize, what makes Kingston unique from other places around the world, and certainly the heritage aspect that we have here in Kingston is something that we need to foster. I think the federal and provincial governments can do a lot to help with regards to that. We know that the provincial government is responsible for the operation of Fort Henry, while the federal government actually owns the assets. But I've never understood, for instance, why we don't have any educational programs or summer programs that encourage young people to be able to spend some time here in Kingston during the summer learning about Canadian history that's so alive and vibrant here in Kingston. You hear stories about these programs happening in the United States and other jurisdictions. We have a world-class university here that can provide educational support with teachers and other experts in the field. There's no reason why we can't have programs like that established here in Kingston. So that's certainly one of my many ideas on fixing Kingston's economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Batu. Harvey, the floor is yours.
Can you just read the last part of the question, what the actual question?
Yes, as the potential Kingston MPP, what policies do you support to help keep the local economy strong?
Okay, thank you.
How's that?
What policies? Well, it is true that we do have a large public sector employment base in Kingston. And that has been in jeopardy in the past, and municipal councils have done what they could, and to a large degree successfully, to prevent the loss of public sector jobs in our community. When the base was going to be closed, I know Pittsburgh Township pulled out the stops to make sure that costs to the base that could be borne by the municipality were offered in order to save the base. And that was done, and now CFB Kingston is the largest by personnel base in the country. We have a huge economic driver in CFB Kingston. So I would make sure that we can foster collaboration among various organizations within the community, both public and private, to keep jobs here, both public and private. In terms of the of tourism, of course, Kingston has a huge tourism market, but it's something that we can't take for granted. It's something that we have to foster and further develop. We need to harness the full potential of Fort Henry and the Rideau Canal. These are the only World Heritage Sites in the province of Ontario. The provincial government has not done enough, I think, to advance and promote that particular asset that we enjoy. Kingston had a plan for a deep water port. We can encourage river cruise, the river cruise industry, as is done in Europe, using the Rideau, the Ottawa River, and the St. Lawrence as a route for cruise ships. But we do need a deep water port in Kingston. We do need, so policy would be to seek help to build a deep water pier in Kingston.
Thank you. Time there has expired. I call on Sophie now for the next.
Thank you. In terms of which provincial policies I would support, since my experience is primarily federal, I apologize, I don't have a specific policy that I can pick out and identify, but there are some areas that I know that we need to work on. For example, we have the situation in Kingston with KP and what to do with that building. There are many people who have had their eye on KP and they would like to open it up for tourism permanently. There are many groups that have different interests. There's a sailing school, there's the Thousand Islands tours that need to go through, that are going through there now when there's an opportunity with one of the fundraisers that they're doing. And I think that we need to support, the provincial government needs to support projects as they come up on a project-by-project basis. It's critical that the government be open to looking at these opportunities as they come up. Corrections needs to go through a series of processes by which to dissolve their interest in KP, and it's during that process we need to make use, or we should be able to make use of that property. There's tremendous benefit to be gained from that. So my comment would be that we need to be able to work with all levels of government to access any opportunities as they come up, and I'm using KP as one primary example. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter. Marion and I had the opportunity to live in Munich for 4 months, and one of the treats in being there was going into Hauptbahnhof in downtown Munich and looking for the Tourism Ontario posters that were posted up. It was a little bit of a touch of home while we were away. Now I noticed that all of them were the GTA, so certainly I think the provincial government has a role to play in promoting local tourism, as Harvey said, with the Rideau Canal system, Fort Henry, in promoting attractions like that around the world. I know we have at least one municipal councillor here, and I suspect if she were asked what provincial policies might benefit the local economy, it would start with the heads and beds tax. I think Mark Gerritsen would feel like half his workload disappeared if he actually got some movement from the province on that file. And I think it's one that's going to take continued attention. I think one of the key things for the next MPP, and I'll come back to the Drummond report, however much of the Drummond report is acted upon, it's going to cause a restructuring, a major restructuring of the provincial government. That is the thrust of it. And Kingston, of course, becomes vulnerable in that sort of restructuring. So I think one of the key roles of our next MPP is to protect the interests of Kingston and the islands through that restructuring. Thank you.
Thank again the candidates. We have now the 2-minute response session from each for the discussion on the economy. And so I will start with Harvey on this one. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, I think enough has been said about the right to work and how obviously dismissive we've been about the possibility of that entering into a discussion at all, into the discussion. But going back to some of the things that were said concerning the nature of our economy in Kingston and what we could do to, what government policy would be important to protect it. The problem, one of the major problems is there's no real coordination between the federal and the provincial governments in the area of tourism. And both have a huge part to play in this. There has to be some coordination. There has to be participation, cooperation in this very important area for our community. Sophie was talking about KP. That's a prime example. The federal government, when it declares that property surplus, it doesn't go anywhere but to Canada Lands, who are charged with the duty of maximizing the return to the federal government of that property in terms of sale, redevelopment, whatever. It's not to promote any sort of policy of government, either the provincial government, local government, or the federal government, but simply to make money on it. And that's a mistake. It's a great opportunity, and we have to make sure that governments cooperate to realize of those opportunities that are important to communities, like the KP in our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. The floor, Sophie, is yours.
Thank you for supporting my position that the different levels of government do need to cooperate with each other. It's one of the key things that I think that we need to do to take advantage of these opportunities as they come up. And I think that that should be our primary focus. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. David, the floor is yours.
I understand this is the opportunity to respond to other comments, but I'd actually like to bring up a whole new area under the economy. I was hoping that one of the questions that would come up would be around minimum wage and livable wage. At the outset, I commented on, as we all know, the growing gap between the haves and the have-nots. And I think in terms of what we mean to being liberal, what our view is of liberal, I think it will be tested in the discussion of what we do with a minimum wage versus a livable wage. The Premier appointed in the last summer a commission to look at establishing a procedure in Ontario to set the minimum wage and to keep it updated or to review it. But I think we get into interesting questions about whether minimum wage should keep a full-time worker in at the poverty line, as is now the case, or whether it should be more. I don't know the answers to that, but again, I think as a liberal community, we need to spend some time thinking about that.
Thank you. David, the floor is yours.
Thank you. In terms of two other ideas with regards to the Kingston economy, one of them, which of course will require the involvement of senior levels of government, and David's already mentioned this with regards to infrastructure investment. The province is committed to $35 million of new infrastructure investment. The real important thing is to make sure that that investment has maximum multiplier effects and spin-offs. We know that we have a gap with regards to municipal infrastructure, which I'm sure across the country is quite massive, and certainly in the province it's quite a large bill as well. Infrastructure investments, if they're done properly, have the ability to stimulate the economy and grow the economy and have multiplier effects. So if we're going to be spending $35 million, we should make sure that we spend this $35 million on the right investments, and hopefully make sure that they actually have the multiplier effects that maximizes improvements throughout the economy. The second thing you can do with regards to Kingston's economy, and I think this has probably been said before by other experts, is that you need to protect small and medium-sized businesses. Small and medium-sized businesses are the ones that are located in communities and hire people in the community. Large corporations generally look at things from either a national or an international perspective, but small businesses are based in the community. Their livelihood is totally dependent on how well the economy of the local community is going, and if you make it easier for small and medium-sized businesses to be able to do their job, then of course they'll be able to hire more workers and encourage more economic growth that way. Right. And you know that the money that you spend at those businesses, more often than not, will actually be recirculated in the Kingston economy as opposed to going outside of Kingston. So we need to make sure we have policies that actually encourage growth of small and medium-sized businesses, make it easier for them to do what they need to do to hire more workers and employees locally, and that way we can see a positive spin-off in the Kingston economy, ensure that the monies and funds stay in Kingston. Thank you.
Well, I thank all the yes candidates for their response to these questions, and that concludes the question part of the meeting. What we have now are the closing statements by each of the candidates, and again, each is allowed a maximum of 2 minutes for closing remarks. And of course, this can be on any subject. There's no question put to them on this one. So I'm honored to call upon Sophie first for concluding remarks on today's all candidates meeting.
Thank you, Peter. We are blessed in Kingston with superb hospitals and a brand new one being built. We have 3 excellent post-secondary institutions at Queen's, St. Lawrence, and RMC. We have embarked on many renewable energy programs such as the wind farms and many homes and farms contributing solar energy back to the grid through solar rooftop panels. If there is any riding that feels the pulse of this provincial government, it is in Kingston. We need to continue to build on the fine work that has already been done in this city in an inclusive, community-minded way. Regardless of the outcome of this nomination race, getting involved in provincial politics is crucial to the vibrancy of Kingston life. Thank you for your interest, for being here today, and for encouraging everyone in your circle to be involved. In my work, in my volunteering efforts, and during this campaign, I have reached out to the 4 corners of this community. I have found open arms in unexpected places. Loving one's work, being open and being able to communication with people of all types is only one aspect of effective governance. My skills in business and in management, building a cohesive and positive team, and my track record of getting results in this community have prepared me well for every aspect of this job. If selected, I'm convinced that during an election, my experience and integrity, my dedication, hard work, and my inclusive, collaborative approach to politics will deliver another Liberal MPP to Queen's Park. A vote for Sophie is a vote for you. Thank you.
Thank you. David, the floor is yours, sir.
Peter, thank you, and thanks again for moderating this afternoon's discussion, and thanks to Catherine and our nomination committee for their work today. And of course, thanks to all of you for coming out. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion. I had the opportunity to co-manage John Gerritson's 2011 campaign with Catherine, and I discerned what I think are the 4 secrets of John's political success. 1 is never compromise your honor or integrity. Number 2, be wary of special interest support. Number 3, never promise and always deliver. And 4, encourage voters to look beyond the issues of the day for the person who can best represent them. Climatologists, social scientists, and economists like Don Drummond tell us that the issues of our day will be the issues that persist over the next 20 years. How we address them will determine whether we're entering into a period of turmoil or whether we're indeed seeing the dawn of the rebirth of Ontario. I've traveled Canada and much of the world. I've planned and executed multi-million-dollar, multinational corporate initiatives. I've led Habitat for Humanity build teams in Haiti on 2 occasions, and Teddy Bear Picnic organizing committees here in Kingston. Under appointment of Attorney General John Gerritsen, my review of paralegal regulation in Ontario changed the governance structure of the Law Society of Upper Canada. And as a Canadian election observer, I've walked those now violence-filled streets of Kiev. Everything I've experienced has taught me that what we accomplish, we must accomplish together. If this is the value that you share, then I ask you to support my nomination as your candidate for the provincial Liberal candidate, for Kingston and the Islands. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Batu, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you, like I, have experienced a wonderful treat. You've got 4 individuals up here who come up with great ideas as to how we can move Kingston and Ontario forward. Challenge for you, of course, is to identify who amongst us would be the best person to represent the Liberal Party going into the next provincial election. One of the challenges that, of course, the Liberal candidate is going to face is not only coming forward with ideas as to move Ontario forward, but also must be prepared to defend the record of the government. It's a challenging process. The government is, obviously, the Liberal government has been in power for 10 years. But you need to know that you're going to pick a candidate who you will have confidence will effectively advocate the Liberal Party message, be able to work with other groups and individuals, listen to what they have to say, and build that consensus and build that voter coalition that's necessary to be successful in the next provincial election. I put my name forward because I was encouraged by many people who, given my background and experience, community involvement, felt that I would be a good candidate to do that. Of course, it's a little bit challenging when you've got 3 other candidates who are very well qualified as well. But I think given the fact that I've lived in this community for so many years of my life, my background and experience being the son of immigrants, and the multitude of public and community organizations I've been involved in, gives me a great understanding of Kingston and this community. And we need to make sure that we elect a Liberal candidate who's going to effectively represent the interests of Kingston and the Islands. It's not just a question of electing someone who's going to toe the party message, but we also have to have someone who's going to make sure that they can hold the government accountable when necessary. There's been a few things that have happened in this Liberal government where I'm sure if we could all redo it again, we would probably decide things differently. But we need to make sure we send someone to Queen's Park who will stand up for Kingston and the Islands and make sure that not only is Ontario moving forward, but Kingston and the Islands is moving forward. I am that candidate, and I look forward to speaking with you about my policies and ideas and earning your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Batu. Harvey, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Serving 7 years as your mayor has taught me a lot. Humility, respect, the power of collaboration, working to protect and enhance the quality of life in our community, and the need to listen and to deliberate. I've weathered the inevitable storms of political office and known the satisfaction of setting and achieving community goals. And I know what it's like to win big and what it's like to win tough, close elections. I know what it takes to grind out a hard-fought campaign and prevail. I've lived the campaign that we have yet to face. As late as our nomination meeting will be, if there's a spring election, and I think everyone thinks that it's quite likely, we will not have long to reach out to Kingston and the Islands, convey our message, and solidify our candidate in the minds of the voters. I believe I can touch that vital thread of recognition and bring the undecided vote home to our party. I can appeal to the left of center PCs, and we're going to have to do that, and maintain the Liberal base that kept John in power for 18 years. I understand that there are many personal loyalties that will demand your first vote, but once you have satisfied those obligations, spend that second vote carefully and strategically. Please carefully consider the strategic question: who is the candidate most certain to hold this riding for the Liberal Party? I have confidence that it will be with your thoughtful vote that we will hold this riding. Thank you for coming here and expressing your interest in this process. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to express the thanks of all of us for the candidates that are here today. You can see we've got a wonderful field of candidates, outstanding in my view, and I hope all of them do very well. It'll be an interesting nomination evening whenever the date is fixed. But I look forward very much to attending that and seeing many of you again there. I thank each of them for their participation today, for the very civil debate that has taken place and the very useful discussion about policy alternatives that we can look at as a party and as a future government, of course, in the province of Ontario. Thank you for your participation. I turn the floor over to Madam President.
Thank you, Peter. And I can't tell you how happy I was when Peter was able to accept my request that he moderate this. We could not have had a better moderator. Thank you, Peter. And could we have one more round of applause for our candidates who all did such a splendid job. It's clear that when the nomination day comes, which we are hoping will be late February, early March, you are going to choose a great candidate for Kingston and the Islands. You can't help but do that. One of my concerns is we will have a new candidate. Money is going to be very critical in our cause. See, I'm always the one that has to do the commercial, right? We have worked very hard to building up our war chest to be ready. And yes, we're going to be ready for a spring election should we need to be. But I rely on our wonderful Premier's words when she says that she wants to govern. So she will govern possibly up to 2015. Then we will have the luxury of time, but we have to be ready for the spring. So my request to you is, along with my thanks for you being here, would be to consider, we have a little blue basket there of dropping in a little donation today that would cover our expenses here, and thinking of making a donation to the Riding Association as the year has gone on. I will be sending out a fundraising request to you, and be sure that we are pinching every penny that we can so that we have funds that will support our new candidate going forward. We will start spending that money in the pre-writ period, but we would have the opportunity to spend $90,000 in election campaign. And you'd be surprised at how fast that goes, but if you give it to us, we will spend it to keep Kingston and the Islands liberal. Thank you for coming, and I invite you to stay and visit with the different candidates, hear all of those extra things that people didn't get to say, and enjoy one another. Thank you very much for coming.